Today, we take an overview of these electoral issues. This is What Now? I am Precious Amayu. Today, we take a closer look at two nations at critical crossroads, where promises of democracy are colliding with the realities of power, and where the outcomes could shape stability across West and Central Africa. In Côte d'Ivoire, voters head to the polls this weekend as 83-year-old President Alassane Ouattara seeks a fourth term. He is pledging to build on nearly 15 years of economic growth, but critics accuse him of tightening his grip on power. Two of his strongest challengers, former President Laurent Gbagbo and ex-Credit Suisse CEO Tidjane Thiam, are both barred from running, feeling claims that the vote is more coronation than contest. Security forces have been deployed nationwide, and hundreds of opposition supporters are arrested as the government faces growing criticism over shrinking political freedoms. Further east, Cameroon faces a far tenser standoff. The October the 12th presidential election has plunged the country into uncertainty as 92-year-old Paul Biya, one of the world's longest-serving leader, seeks an 8th term. His main rival, Maurice Kamto, was disqualified from the race, prompting protests and warnings of unrest in Yaoundé and Douala. His main rival in the election, Bakary, is now declaring victory. Now, with the final results still pending, fears are growing that another disputed outcome could ignite violence in a nation already torn by separatist conflict and youth disillusionment. Now, across the continent, 2025's election cycle is revealing a familiar pattern: aging leaders clinging to power, weak opposition movements, and citizens increasingly questioning whether Africa's democratic promise still holds. Now, to discuss what these elections mean for governance and regional stability, we're joined on What Now by Director of Suvira Africa, Charles Nyakombo. He joins us live from Nairobi, Kenya, and Programs Officer at CDD Ghana, an observer with the West African Election Observers Network Mission, Vera Ado. Thank you both for joining us. So, Charles, I want to begin with you and just to get your reaction to the recent developments in Cameroon, where we're seeing post-election turmoil, and then the main rival, Shiroma Bakary, is still claiming victory ahead of release of the results on Monday.
Thank you. I'll start by saying that the test of any election is the ordinary man, the man in the village. What the ordinary man wants is that I just want to go and vote peacefully, go to the polling station, vote peacefully. After voting peacefully, the vote should be counted and it should count. That is the only thing that the ordinary man really wants. But in Africa, it is, the systems are trying everything possible to make that not work, and that has also been seen, and that has been seen in several African countries. What we saw in Cameroon is not peculiar to that specific case. We have seen the issues around the voter suppression, where there's no lack of transparency and, of course, intimidation, both of those who are going to vote and of course the opposition areas. Then, of course, the election credibility really much depends on the credibility of the electoral body. So if there is little hope or less trust on the electoral body, even if the election was peaceful, then of course it results into tension. And of course, the limited access to media and of course restriction in some of the areas really speaks a lot to that specific process. So we really hope that when the results will be announced, the country will be peaceful. But of course, we are looking at the fragility based on the provisional results that we saw, and of course, the declaration of the opposition leader that the main challenger that he had won the election. So it's quite fragile and volatile. But of course, it is not a peculiar case compared to other African states.
And Charles, I want to stay with you because I want to pull in Tanzania into the conversation. There is a widely anticipated victory for President Suluhu, and that would be only the third time a woman has been popularly elected as president of an African country. But there is also an opinion that erosion of democracy will only come at the cost of economic potential, and she has been accused of a repression of the opposition as well.
Absolutely true. When the current president, Dr. Samia Suluhu, took leadership, it was seen as a fresh of breath air, as really, something so new, because in the whole East Africa region, it was the first time we were having a female president, and that was something that we even in Kenya celebrated. But of course, in the first year, we saw a lot of diplomatic niceties. We saw a series of calmness and reforms. Even the opposition leader that was in exile by that time, Tudulisu, came back. But then now, as the election neared, we saw a complete shift of turn of events. So things, again, democracy now was subject to threat and, of course, put under siege. The opposition leader himself was thrown into prison, arrested over some charges that really do not really make sense, politically instigated charges of treason. Yet, what he was looking for was only reforms in the electoral process. So then that really rubbished a lot of the gains that we thought were coming in with the with President Samia. Yeah. Then again, the diplomatic ties that we saw, the the cross-border being detained in Tanzania, then of course from the Ugandan side also detained. Then we're like, what is really boiling into? So when we looked at it from a standpoint, we saw that there's a lot of fear that is being instilled today in Tanzania ahead of the next week's election. And of course, as we speak right now, the major opposition candidates have been disqualified. They are not on the ballot, and that, of course, in its own is a recipe for disaster. Of course, we really hope that the country will remain as united and as peaceful as possible. But of course, these actions that we have seen in the recent few weeks or months to election really erode the confidence that people had in the government to restore justice and peace.
All right, Charles, let me put you on hold as I bring in Vera. We will just turn attention now to Côte d'Ivoire, where that election to hold on Saturday has been tagged Africa's most important election this year. Vera, what makes that election a high-stake election?
Okay. Thanks for having me. I think that during your introduction, you gave a very good context about what is happening in Côte d'Ivoire. We know that during the 2016, there was a constitutional review, and it means that the current president is able to contest again. And so this will be his second time and technically his fourth time. We also saw that some candidates, about 17 or 22 candidates wanted to contest, and during the process, only 5 of them were very successful, and the main contender, 2 contenders were disqualified. And this is a process that you could not challenge also in court. It's a final decision, and so it's an election that most people are looking out for, that if only 5 candidates are going out for election. Also knowing that in Côte d'Ivoire, they have seen electoral violence before, if you look at going back to 2002, 2010. And so this is a very critical point where the country is at a point to determine if indeed they can use the polls to either make a change or to maintain the candidate. And so with the disqualification of the main candidate coming up, there are lots of issues with the electoral citizen sponsorship. The electoral commission yesterday engaged the observers as well. They told us about their preparedness, but issues about the
all right, Vera, I need to put you on hold. Just allow me to put you on hold briefly as we cross over to Anambra State for a live coverage or live broadcast of Governor Soludo's continued campaign rally in Gbagbo constituency. We would bring you that broadcast now, but if you want to continue to watch the program, what now? Please scan the QR code on the screen to watch on platforms like Biscay Beach Channel 524 and on YouTube as well. All right, Vera, please go ahead. Land on your thought.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so yeah, so I think that it's we've had the West African community have had series of elections since from 2003. Nigerian went, and we saw the Senegal did, and just last year, we have seen Ghana also coming into elections and coming up. So I think that there's also a lot of expectations that we will have a peaceful election from Cote d'Ivoire, knowing that they have a history of some electoral violence. And so most of us are anticipating and observing that citizens will go to the polls and have a peaceful
But Vera,
election.
sorry to interrupt you, but the idea of elections, as much as, whether it's peaceful or not, is to confer legitimacy for governance. And if you have disqualified the two main opposition candidates, that's Tijan Thiam and former President Laurent Gbagbo, one wonders if this is a missed opportunity to give voters a real democratic choice.
Right, it's a concern, and also unfortunately, it's not a process that could be challenged in court. And so maybe this is an opportunity for us as observers to see how do we continue to talk about electoral reforms in the region, looking at how we've seen a lot of violence and the issue. Also, again, there's also a ban on protest. And when you ban protest, it means that citizens are not able to go on the street. That's some of the few concerns that we have raised, that protest is a right for citizens to be able to protest and demonstrate. But going into the election, there's a ban on protest. And so you can sense that the atmosphere is generally peaceful and calm, but that is where sometimes we are worried that it seems peaceful, it seems quiet. What are people thinking? What is happening behind? What are people not saying? If they're loud and they're able to protest, then you can actually see the concerns and you can read from people what their intentions are. But if you are not able to allow citizens to protest and for them to talk and demonstrate, then it could also sense that people have issues, they are not able to raise it. And that also doesn't... it affects the whole credibility of the elections as well. So sometimes some of these are concerns that we are all looking at to see, is there a way the international community can continue to engage? Because we could not, the opposition could not contest the decision, and it's part of their legal system, and we have to look at those legal procedures as well in terms of the legal framework that govern election in West Africa that do not allow. Some of these decisions should be allowed to be contested so that others will be more comfortable to accept why they are not allowed to contest in the election. So I think that's a very big concern. So far, we haven't heard them given their support to any other candidate, and that's also another worrying part.
And that's one of the things that we will talk about, that opposition coalition that we haven't seen across the continent as much as we should. But we'll have to take a break now. I'll put you, Vera and Charles, on hold. When we return, we'll continue the conversation. Stay with us, everyone.
In a world where news never sleeps, we're taking a giant leap into the future. We at TVC Communications are proud to introduce a new era in news broadcasting. But first, let me introduce my special friend, Olamide AI. Hi, Olamide Human. Is it time to come out yet? Yes, indeed it is. And you can bring your friends along. Meet our new AI anchors, speaking your language and sharing your stories. From English, good day. These are the news headlines to Pidgin.
Better country people, on a good evening.
Yoruba, Ekaro, Ekudedia Sikuni, Shidadalabai, Igbo,
Ndewo, Auto Innovation, Ahambu Obada Samson Ejiro,
and Hausa.
Mutane na sanar da zuwa, sunana Raki Abdulkarim kuma kana kallon TVC News.
We are bringing the news closer to you, faster, smarter, and always reliable. And together, we are shaping the future of news for every Nigerian, everywhere. Innovation, connection, and trust. The future of news is here.
TVC News, first with breaking news. And now first in Nigeria with AI news anchors.
Thanks for staying with us, everyone. We've been looking at elections in Africa so far, and we've been speaking with the director of Suvira Africa, Charles Yakombo, who joins us from Nairobi, Kenya. and also the programs officer at CDD Ghana, an observer with the West African Elections Observer Network Mission. Vera Ado, thank you both for staying with us. So, Charles, let me come to you. It's not been all that bad. We've seen elections in Ghana, I think it's Malawi, and then Senegal, where it went, at least it was peaceful, and we saw that the incumbent was also defeated. But generally, how would you rate these elections so far? Have we passed the credibility test to uphold democratic norms?
No, it's a mix because, as you rightly said, we are happy to see that in some African countries we have some good progress when it comes to election issues. You rightly said Malawi, for example, President Chakwera, conceded defeat to Mutharika, and that's a good thing. It's peaceful. In Zambia, it was the same in Senegal and all that. But if you look at the entire African country, the African continent, it's quite rare. It's the percentage is quite low when it comes to the election, and the opposition is being suppressed in almost using all means. When you look at Kenya, for example, the government tries to bring the opposition to the government so that now the dissent is silenced. So when you look at now other countries like now we could talk about Cote d'Ivoire, there is a threat. The institutions are being used to to criminalize dissent. People are being arrested. And the same script, look at it from Uganda, we have the opposition leader being charged for treason. Tanzania, we mentioned. So in so many countries, and sometimes we look at elections at the point of just voting, but all this begins before, during the campaigns, because when you deny your position, or rather you deny your opponents to campaign in specific areas, already you are making things, you are already affecting the credibility of the elections. When you are barring the media, or you are arresting people, you are trying to suppress and repress the opposition, then now we miss the point from there. So in a nutshell, I'm just saying that we have good examples to follow, but of course we have a very long way in Africa for us to end up in an election where the opponent is able to greet the winner and say, we had a good fight, but you've taken you've taken charge, and of course now we're happy with that. So strengthening also our judicial system, that has also been an issue. In Kenya, for example, in 2007, the opposition couldn't go to court because they had lost confidence in what the court will say. So that again is another issue. We look at it in other countries, because even if the electoral bodies are weak or are being intimidated, but we are having confidence in the judiciary, at least it may not really plunge the country into war. But where now the citizens have also lost hope in the judicial system, then it becomes a problem. So it's quite of a difficult situation, because from where I sit, I hold a view that there is no position that is more precious than life. We should not lose even a single person when it comes to election, but that is
Charles.
Still far from achieving.
I want to bring in Vera. Vera, you've been listening to Charles. He's been talking about, politicians using the same playbook of repression, to clamp down on dissent, and then collusion with the electoral body in most of these countries. And I also want to get your reaction to that, because you are an election observer. And then do you think that African voters are being offered much of a choice at all?
So just to emphasize that, yes, we've seen significant improvements in African election. As an election observer with CODEO, Ghana's election observer group, we saw what happened in Ghana, and we've seen the significant reforms that we have seen. And maybe back to the judiciary, to say that we have different levels or arms of government that needs to ensure that there are some level of checks we have some credibility with our elections. We still have issues with, even though we've seen that Ghana's election have really seen some significant improvement, issues around parliamentary adjudication is still pending. You've had issues where members of parliament will have issues at court, and for 4 years, the issue is still pending. And by the time the case is decided, the member has already, the member's term is already expired in Parliament. And so these are some of the things that we continue to keep talking about to see how the different arms of government will be able to push for some more reforms. It also calls for us to look at the whole election framework, the laws, the regulations. How do we ensure that we continue to push? And this is where election observer groups come in. This is where civil society will continue to push, because the reforms itself will not come. Politicians will not accept to make changes on their own. It requires some level of effort from both the media, the civil society, for us to look at what is happening, what are our recommendations. And so for us, we are here in Cote d'Ivoire. We've seen some of the issues. We have raised concerns. We met the Electoral Commission, the Independent Electoral Commission. We met some of the candidates, and we were here before now. We came for the pre-election mission to assess the preparedness, the issue around security, and we've noticed some things. And most of the time, one of the things we are also looking at for is how citizens, observers can equally be part of the process. Sometimes it's good to have the international observers in the country to watch the process. But one of the things we realize is that we need more and more citizens who have more stake at the country's election to be out there to also observe the processes. So yes, we've seen some elections go south, others have done well, but I think I agree with Charles. We still have a lot of work to do to make sure we have much and more credible election, the credibility of the Electoral Commission, the EMBs, because if we do not trust the Electoral Commission, then it's difficult to accept the outcome of the election. And so the posture, how, for instance, in Ghana, we have raised concerns about how Electoral Commission is appointed, how they are selected, the governance structure. And we have to shift from that process where we have presidents appointing, even if you are very independent, the fact that you have been appointed by a political leader puts you in that situation already. And we have seen a significant decline for trust in the EMBs over time in most other African countries. So we have to look at the whole framework to see how we can learn from each other, how Malawi is doing it. We had Ghana opposition leader accepting defeats within less than 24 hours of the election. And so some progress being made, but of course, there are a lot more work that needs to be done. And that's why we are hoping that our neighboring countries, Burkina, and I think next year, Benin is also going to election to see how we can learn from each other and not use the state to oppress opposition and also the media, even the civil society.
So I have a minute left, and I wanted to split it between both of you, 30 seconds, but I don't trust both of you to be able to speak for 30 seconds. So I'm just going to give it to Charles alone as he speaks on the role of citizens in all of this, because we say we do not trust the electoral bodies, but sometimes citizens don't show up, and there are people who believe that that's an opportunity where election can be rigged. Charles, I want to get your reaction, final reaction to that.
Thank you very much. You know, it is said that it is better to have an imperfect country that is struggling to perfection than not to have a country at all. So for our colleagues in Cote d'Ivoire and of course Tanzania in the next week's election, it's better to uphold peace, and that's one of the biggest roles of the citizenry. You know, despite the provocation that you'll get from the police and all that. Then, of course, you know, civic engagement is very important. You know, just knowing the importance of voters. Because there are some people, in most cases, citizens have lost trust in the, you know, even in the voting, because they believe the vote does not count. But I think, as citizens, we just have to do our part. Just go, do vote. Then, of course, uphold peace, because at the end of the day, we still have life after the election, and that should be one of the biggest role of any citizen in any country that we have. Yeah.
Well, we're following this development and monitoring this election. Thank you so much, Charles. Always a pleasure to have you on. Director of Suvira Africa, Charles Inyakombo, who joined us from Nairobi, Kenya. And a pleasure to speak with you as well. I know you're in Cote d'Ivoire monitoring this election. Vera Ado, who is the programs officer at CDD Ghana, an observer with the West African Elections Observers Network Mission. I'm sure we'll speak to you even more as you observe this election. Thank you both.